We're back, week 2, the NFL Vegas strategy show. We're going to talk, of course, a little college football. We're going to talk a lot of NFL, 13-game main slate. We'll touch on the Sunday night game and the Monday night game as well. We're going to get started in a minute with some thoughts on your survivor leagues this week. Thought that was particularly valuable, as we talked about, as JBC and Stats talked about, how Cincinnati may not be the best pick last week. 50% or more of some survivor fields eliminated with the Bengals' performance last week. And if you watched the show, you avoided that like I did, Stats, because I went with the Seahawks, which was a team that you guys thought was a good pivot off of them. You guys may notice that JBC's not here yet. He's not going to be here, but Pooh is here. Stats is here. I'm here. Big T's going to be here in a couple of minutes. He's finishing up some other show that not a lot of people watch. That's, I mean, he'd rather be here, let's be honest. But he will be here in a few minutes to talk about college football bets and the NFL bets this Sunday night, Monday. In the meantime, Stats, will get started. How are you? How's your week going? How was your week or your day last Sunday in terms of the NFL? It was a bit of, a classic week 1, right? There were teams and offenses feeling each other out. It seemed like this year there's always movement in the NFL from season to season. It seemed like this season there was a little bit more of it in places where we would have expected some more excitement. And I, for one, wasn't heavy on the New Orleans Saints. I actually X'd out Carr from my pool, the quarterback. And that was probably an offense that you wanted to have exposure to. But outside of Kamara, it was tough to get to them at least. But how are you? How's your week? How are you doing? How was last week?
Yeah, I mean, doing better. I'm walking again at almost normal. Almost normally. So that's a plus from last week. But yeah, look, NFL week 1. We talked about it last week. Week 1, you're always going to have you're going to have an overreaction coming into the year. You're going to have an overreaction coming out of week 1. So that's kind of what we take advantage of in the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Are those reactions. I think what you have to look at in week 1 is if it was something, if you were kind of against the grain with something, you had a really strong opinion on a team, a player, whatever the case may be, and then you got, you were reaffirmed or affirmed of that, not reaffirmed, but affirmed of that in week 1, you need to kind of continue with that. So there's been a couple of things. The Cincinnati, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have Big T here, but JBC and I have been pretty bearish on Cincinnati, and so that look last week may, for us, may not have been as big a surprise. I didn't expect them to really lose the game, but I'm not totally shocked in the outcome. So if there's anything like that you kind of handicapped, you spent the whole, so you guys are all NFL guys watching this show, mostly DFS people. So if there was a player, I always think if there was a player or a team that you kind of had a strong opinion on, an axe, as we used to call it on the trading floor, and then you got to see it kind of play out in week 1, well, that should just kind of push you towards, doubling up on that come week 2. So that's kind of my take there. The Saints is another, that's a team, JBC was texting me during the game because he was high on Atlanta. Look, again, it's week 1. He's high. He's got a lot of futures bets on Atlanta to win that division. I told you I've got Saints over on their win total, Saints to win the division. Can't get too excited against Carolina. I did think Carolina was going to keep that game close. Bryce Young, on the flip side, I sort of thought was going to take a step forward here. Again, it's 1 week, but not too promising there. And if we had JBC on, he'd be crushing me on the Daniel Jones situation, who I thought was going to be a lot better than he was. But again, it's week 1, and now all of a sudden, everyone killed Daniel Jones last week. We'll get to it eventually today. But now people are like, I kind of want to take him this week against Washington, a team he's had success against. So, yeah, very interesting. You mentioned Survivor. Seattle was the pick I took in Circa. So certainly happy about that. We lost close to 40% of people in the Circa pool. And there's a lot of options this week. So I don't know if you want to kind of go over it quick. We could go over a little Survivor strategy this week.
Yeah, well, look, Daniel Jones, New York radio, of course, week 1, like, get him out of there, right? Bring back Tommy Cutlets. Classic. That's what New York radio does. But you talk about, I guess, Stan's takes that you felt confident in that you took. I was very confident. I was very high on Zamir White based on everything Antonio Pierce said throughout the offseason, based on what we saw of him last season when he got a chance to play. I was at least 4x the field in DFS. He played the first rotation, the first time that the Raiders had the ball, and then all of a sudden you've got the backup in there, and he starts to run wild, and White really didn't see the field again. And now you've got Antonio Pierce saying, well, I think we have to go with the hot hand. So we did learn some things in week one in terms of, all right, who's really going to be a bell cow? We saw that Joe Mixon. And maybe that was something that we should have seen with the way that Houston likes to have that one back. Of course, coming from the San Francisco system, he looked fantastic. He looked like he almost had never looked. Stats in Cincinnati, he got more touches than he would ordinarily get in Cincinnati. So definitely a couple of things to take away from week one, but you also don't want to get too crazy with a guy like Daniel Jones. Again, Giants invested a lot of money in him. There's going to be opportunities, and maybe this week against a terrible Washington defense that made Baker Mayfield look like vintage Tom Brady, is perhaps an opportunity to take advantage of. Of course, Jaden Daniels running for a couple of touchdowns last week, but we'll get to all that. So we'll start with Survivor. If you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat here, because we'll have an opportunity to get to them without JVC filling our time up talking about various subjects. But the biggest favorites here, the Baltimore Ravens against those Raiders. They're hosting them. They are currently 8.5-point favorites in some markets. The Lions against those Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the books expecting the Bucs to come back to earth a little bit. They are 7.5-point favorites. The Texans, this is the Sunday night game against the Bears. They are 6.5-point favorites. The Eagles against the Falcons, who talk about a guy who looked like he doesn't have much left in the tank. Kirk Cousins, not a good performance there. Again, a well-coached team. I don't want to say a good team. TJ Watt looked dominant for the Steelers last week. And then the Cowboys, 6-point favorites against the team that looks so dominant, of course, against the Carolina Panthers. I imagine the Ravens and Lions are probably going to dominate the ownership in Survivor here. You don't think so?
No.
Who's the popular?
Certainly the Ravens. So the Ravens are catching the most action, right? So I do a ton of Survivor. I do an article for us at RPS for the subscribers. I've got an app that I help partner in sports betting called the Sharp app. And if you go to that YouTube channel, I do a whole video on Survivor pools and break down the analysis. But Baltimore will get the most action. Detroit not getting that much because of the fact that you've got so much more future value on Detroit. So, you got their upcoming weeks at Arizona, not that great. But in 2 weeks, they're home against Seattle. They've got Tennessee at home in week 8. Like you've got some options there. The second most picked team here this week is going to be the Chargers. It's actually the team I could speak for JBC because he was speaking about this yesterday. That's the team he likes the most this week in Survivor pools. Now, it's understandable why they're getting the second most action here in Survivor pools, because you don't have a lot of future value. I think the next time they're going to be a favorite is week 6, and that's at Denver. You're probably not going to want to touch that. They're home for the Saints. They'll probably be favored in that game. But if you project it out, they're not projected to be more than a 3.5-4-point favorite for a long, long time this year. So that's why people are on the Chargers. But if you want to jump in, like the team I'm leaning towards more is actually Houston against Chicago. They're about 6.5-point favorite. And that's another team that they're going to be favored in upcoming weeks, but not by a whole lot. They're at Minnesota, home for Jacksonville, home for Buffalo, at New England. Maybe that New England game, but I'm looking out in the future. I'd much rather them home against Chicago than at New England right now. So that's kind of the game. And when you look at it from a leverage standpoint, right now about 10% of pools or entries are taking Houston. I think they've got just about the same probability. If not, it's actually a greater probability to win the game. That Charger line has come down. So they've got a greater chance to win their game than the Chargers do. And you're getting them at about half the ownership, if not even a little bit more than that, than the Chargers. So I kind of like that from a leverage standpoint, and from eliminating a team in Houston what we think probably has a lot of future value. But if you really look at their schedule, I don't think they do.
From the standpoint of a couple of different things there. One, Chargers right now only 5-point favorites. They are on the road in Carolina. Of course, we saw the Saints demolish them, but that always with the West Coast teams going to East Coast seems like a tricky proposition. It is a new head coach. I get that they looked particularly J.K. Dobbins looked phenomenal week 1 against those same Raiders that the Ravens are playing. What about the future value on the Ravens? Do you think if you were choosing straight up, do I want the Ravens or do I want the Texans? Is the future value better enough for the Ravens that you're saying go Houston?
I think between the future value on the Ravens and the amount of people who are going to be picking the Ravens, I prefer Houston in the big pool. I'm taking Houston in circa, so we'll see how I do if I can keep that going. But I think in circa, I think they're worth the pick here. Baltimore to me, I still think they're the best team in the AFC. I know they lost last week. I still, it might have been a 7-point game, but we know it came down to basically a toenail. And they were going to go for 2. So who knows which way that game goes. I think that was a pretty even up game. We'll get to a little bit more, I guess, of Baltimore when we go over their game this week. But if you look at, they've got situations. They're going to be home against Washington in week 6. I don't like to look too far out, but that's going to be certainly a week that you would consider taking them if you had them left. Their game against Denver is at home in week 9. You're going to have other opportunities, whereas Houston, you really don't see many opportunities at all for Houston until maybe week 12 at home against Tennessee. And that's just too far out for me to, you get these injuries. We saw Tua last night. You just never know which way it's going to go, where you're thinking not just in the team that you want to take in the future, but teams, picking against certain teams. I'll give you, for instance, this week. Now, I don't like the pick, but I cannot tell you how many people have texted me, DM me, asking me my thoughts on Indianapolis and survivor pools. Now, I don't like it at all. But I understand the thinking there is because we've got Love out. They want to take a chance on Indy. You're going to have other opportunities, not many, but you may have another opportunity late in the season on Indy. I just don't know when you've got all these teams that are in the 6 to 7 point range, and Baltimore is, of course, a little higher. But I understand if you wanted to take a contrarian pick, I just think there's some safer picks, with quotations there, safer contrarian picks than going all the way down to Indianapolis. But I get it. Malik Willis, not exactly a name that people are excited about. But when you look at that spread, it's a 3-point line, and it's not moved in Indianapolis' favor when I don't know a single person out there looking to bet Green Bay. Because, like I said, people are just jumping all over them in Survivor. I know a lot of people, as far as the square public, want to bet them outright here. And yet that line kind of lingers around that 2.5 number. So I'd be cautious in going that contrarian in Indianapolis this week.
And even though it's early in the season and the weather not quite what it's going to be in November, December, January, you still have a dome team in Indianapolis heading outdoors into Green Bay. The team is well coached. Again, Matt LaFleur coming from that same San Francisco tree that has turned around the fortunes of the Houston Texans. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. The Big T will be here in just a couple of minutes. Again, questions. We'll talk about Danny Dimes and the matchup binking when we get to that game on NFL coverage. Talk about our thoughts on that. It's more focused on the betting market than DFS, but I expect that even with last week's performance, I expect that his price point and the matchup will keep him in the range of where you want to go in DFS at the quarterback position. But we'll start with Arizona heading into Kansas State. This is a game that's on tonight. Arizona 6.5-point favorites. The over or total there, I should say, is 60.5. 245 favorites are Kansas State stats. What are your thoughts here on this game? Arizona heading just a little bit to the east.
Yeah, I was, looking at this one earlier. It was kind of fluctuating the line here between, the line at least that you could get, the best line on Arizona between 7 and 7.5, and I really liked it at the 7.5. I know some sharp money that came in. I know some sharp bettors who took Arizona at the 7.5. As I look at it now, I don't believe there's any 7.5s that exist out there in the market. So the best you're going to be able to get is Arizona at 7, and there's some, if you're on the Kansas State side, you can get some 6.5s that are juiced minus 6.5. But I like Arizona even at the 7 here. I just think, McMillan, one of the best receivers in the country, with Fafita throwing to him. I think the Kansas State defense, they looked a little vulnerable, or a lot vulnerable, to the pass. They gave up 342 yards passing, 2 touchdowns to Lane last week. So I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think, Kansas State obviously favored to win, but I think Arizona can go in there and actually win this game outright. I think they're going to give. I think the Kansas State defense is more of a question mark for me. I think Arizona is going to put up enough points, stay in this game, and potentially even win this one on the money line.
All right, going with the dog in the first game. Don Yeezy is here, my buddy. Don Yeezy, welcome in. Next game, Boston College, 14.5-point underdogs heading into Missouri. A 53 total here. Missouri, 625 favorites here. Interesting to see there's a couple of these games with huge spreads here. Stats. I don't know what that means. You're cooking up. Are you trying to take a couple of dogs and do a little parlay? What are your thoughts?
The thing, when we kind of decide on the games to pick, we try to give like some of the bigger matchups. It's not a great weekend for college football as far as the matchups go. We don't have a lot of great games. So that game tonight might be the best game of the entire weekend, and that's two ranked teams. You've got two ranked teams in this game as well. It's the only two games this weekend where you're seeing ranked team against ranked team. BC, look, they want to run the ball. They want to grind it out. They had that win. Look, you win over Florida State. Maybe that win isn't as great as a win as we may have thought that win would have been earlier in the year. But with Bill O'Brien, I mean, he's looking to run the ball. They've run the ball 98 times and thrown it just 29 so far this season. They've got three running backs at over 100 yards. Castellanos, the quarterback, he's running for 81 and a touchdown to go with. He's got 340 yards passing with 6 touchdowns in the air. So, they've been pretty efficient when they have thrown the ball. I think if Missouri's offense sputters at all, and they've got two of their best receivers are not exactly 100%. I think, and they had some issues with penalties as well in the game against Buffalo. I think Boston College, with the ability to run the ball, I think they keep this game low scoring. I think it stays to the under, and if it stays to the under, then I'm really confident. I don't mind a parlay here under with Boston College.
All right, under and taking the dog here in Boston College and Missouri. Next one up, a team that both you and JBC are very high on, Oregon, 16.5-point favorites in a interstate rivalry against Oregon State. 49.5 is the total in this one. Oregon, 800 favorites. Do you think that Oregon is finally going to be the team that just demolishes their opponent in this matchup?
Yeah, well, let me defend JBC because he is not the one who's been high on Oregon. I have been the one who's high on Oregon, and they have let me down so far. They've won, and in winning, they've moved down in the rankings because they just have not been impressive, have not been able to cover, and here they are again, a fairly large favorite, over 2 touchdowns. But when you look at the line move here, it's the line. It went from like 14.5 up to the 16.5. And that's unusual for a team that's been disappointing. So I kind of lean that way where I'm going to say, you know what, the talent that Oregon has is clearly superior to the Oregon State talent. They just have not been able to put it together, right? So they've had offensive line struggles that I think they were able to cure in the Boise State game last week. They made some changes in the middle of that game, and it seemed to shore up that offensive line. I think they come into this game and just kind of put a hurting on Oregon State. I'm going to go one more time, going back to the well. They've got to win eventually. You can just take them every week, and eventually they're going to cover a game against the spread. I think this is it, though. I'm going to lay the big number, the 16.5. I think they get the job done against the in-state rivals.
I think this team is finally going to gel and maybe be a force to be reckoned with from week 3 on, whereas we were hopeful that they would get out of the gate hot, but that hasn't happened. But if you've taken them on a money line, maybe you make a couple of dollars every week. You just roll that over. And if they do get hot, then good. You're going to be winning at the end of the season. Next game, Notre Dame, 7.5-point favorites heading into Purdue, 47 total here. 290 favorites are the Irish. What are your thoughts here on this game? Purdue always seems to play games tough. They always seem to be in the mix there at the end of the season, but never quite getting to the top. What do you think they're going to do here against the Irish?
Yeah, I mean, this game would have been like 13.5, 14 before last week's debacle that Notre Dame had against Northern Illinois. So it's been, I mean, to me, I feel like you're getting a lot of value here just based on that performance last week. Quarterback gets hurt. He's a running quarterback. I think it changed their entire game plan mid-game. They've got an entire week now. It's his non-throwing arm. He hurt his shoulder. It's his non-throwing shoulder. So I think they're going to be able to account for that a little bit better, having a week to prepare with him with the shoulder, and we'll see how it is health-wise. but I think they got in a little bit of bad luck. It wasn't like the defense played poorly. They gave them short fields, 2 extremely short fields that they scored on, and even that game-winning field goal at the end of the game. I think they started that drive on the 50-yard line. I'm going to go with that game was a little bit fluky. I like the performance against Texas A&M. Everyone's going to forget about that now that they went into A&M, won that game. I think they handled Purdue here. I think the number has just gotten way too short. You could get -7 on this game. One of the sharper books, of course, Pinnacle's got it at 9. So that they have not moved it all the way down to the 7. So you're going to get it at 7 just about everywhere else in the U.S. And I think that 7 number they cover and get back. I think they got a little something to prove this week after that tough loss.
All right, the Irish and the points for their game at Purdue. Last college game we're going to cover, LSU at South Carolina. LSU 6-point favorites here, 230 on the money line and a 48 total. This is a classic SEC type rivalry. They're not really rivals because South Carolina hasn't been all that good in quite some time. But 6 seems a little bit of a small number here when you're talking about taking on the Gamecocks, even though they're going to be playing in South Carolina. What do the numbers say here?
I like Carolina plus the points, plus the 6.5. I think the most improved unit in the entire SEC is the South Carolina defense. So right now they are leading the SEC in sacks. They've got 10 sacks so far in the year, only giving up 3.6 yards per snap, which leads the conference as well. So I like South Carolina to be able to keep this game close. I think they're going to be able to run the ball on LSU. LSU's done a good job so far this season against the run. There were question marks coming in. Will they be that good against the run? But now they've lost their tackle for the season, Jacoby and Guillory. I think that's going to be a big loss for them in the run stopping defense. I think the Gamecocks will be able to just keep this game tight, possibly win it outright. I think sprinkle a little money line in, but I think the plus 6.5, I like it with South Carolina. Low scoring game, stays to the under, and South Carolina pulls this one out.
All right, good week to pick on the dogs then. At least a couple of choices there. So those are the 5 college games that we're going to cover. We're going to hop into the NFL here again. Any questions, go ahead and drop them into the chat. We expect Big T to join us at some point here in the next 5 or 10 minutes. And if he wants to riff about college for a few minutes, we may let him do that. But
he said he's got some winners, and so we don't want to leave him out. But
he claims winners. We always love it when he brings the winners. So we would certainly not deny him from speaking his mind if and when he gets here. But with that, we'll dive into the NFL and a team that we already talked about, a game that we already talked about when we were talking about Survivor. The Raiders heading across the country into Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Ravens are 8-point favorites right now. This is on DraftKings. The lines and the points and totals that I am pulling from, at least as of right this moment, 41.5 is the total. No surprise for a Ravens game with the defense and the way that they play. 410 on the money line for the Ravens stats. Any disagreement here? I mean, it's hard for me, given what I saw last week out of the Raiders. Of course, this is a second straight game on the road. Now you're not just going to LA, but all the way across the country. And it looked like there was a clear disparity in talent last week between the Raiders and the Chargers. Can only imagine that that's going to be even greater of a disparity this week when they head into Baltimore. What are your thoughts here on this game?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it certainly looks like Baltimore wins the game. Yeah, McNair is always good. He always makes me feel good on a Friday.
Yeah, he's one of our I think most ingenious members here. I mean, stats. Yesterday was kind of like a boring Thursday. We did have, that Thursday night game that we thought was going to be really great. And what's he doing? He's drafting MLB best ball in the middle of the day because the opponents were not letting him pick the most popular teams who ended up, to be fair, scoring a total of like 2.5 runs. But he had the edge over the field yesterday. Be there. Tell us in chat how those best balls worked out for you, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we always love seeing it.
Speaking of sex appeal,
McNair. Oh, wait, hold on.
Here is someone with sex appeal. Big T is joining us. There you go, Big T. Thank you very much. What's going on, buddy?
I was trying to get JSU to stop freaking talking so I could hop on with the boys, but we just kept dragging on when we got through the NFL slate. But happy to be here.
It's good to have you. It's good to have you. We're just starting the NFL, if you can believe it or not, because we tried. We stalled as much as we could. We talked Survivor, we talked college football. But you said you had some winners.
Who was the college games? Let's see. Let's guess them real quick.
Yeah. Well, we got tonight's game, the Arizona K-State.
What's the number?
The Arizona K-State game, it's down to 7 pretty much in most places. +7. You could get -6.5 and a couple of bucks juiced.
DK had 6.5.
Yeah, I don't like how K-State play. I gotta take the points. What'd you guys go with?
I took the points here, so I like that as well.
I want the 7 though, like, to be clear.
No, you got to get 7.
Yeah, I like the 7. It's -115 on DK. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's been 7.5, 7 all day. It's kind of bounced back and forth, but I know some sharps who took the 7.5.
DK has it at 6.5 right now. Arizona +6.5.
You got a different line than me?
I mean, what I'm looking at it online. I mean, unless it's moved in the last 45 seconds.
Right there. It says 7 right there.
Okay.
I'm like legitimately curious if there's different lines in different places.
DraftKings is 7 -115.
You know what? You're right. I do something that not a lot of people at this company do when I'm going to come on and do a video is I actually prepare. So I did write down the lines about an hour ago.
I was legitimately curious if stats, is it always the exact same price everywhere? Is that I honestly
don't know. It's all over. Like FanDuel's got 6.5.
No, I mean like
DraftKings.
Like is
DraftKings it'll be the same price.
Yeah,
it's the same price across the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to troll. I was legitimately curious.
No, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that my line on my computer right now was different. I just
well, there was a way. You remember the local bookies, which still exist. But remember, you'd have like that wacky website to bet on with your local guy, your local bookie.
You'd have different things and stuff.
You could have I could program it to have. If I know JT is a fan of one team, I could skew the lines there, and that's what guys would do. They were like, this guy takes the Giants every week,
and people would take favorites every week.
They would take it all, and they would just skew the lines towards the type of better you are. So that was
always did that crap.
Always.
Like home teams, like the Bengals, everyone would bet the home team, so you'd literally just bump it like 2-3 points.
All right, Boston College at Missouri. Boston College, at least an hour ago, was a 14.5 point dog, 53 total.
I like Boston College. I think Missouri, they haven't played anyone. They haven't given up a point yet. 2 shutouts. We don't know. They play 2 scrub teams, though, and I like that quarterback from BC. I'll take the points. What'd you guys go with?
Same thing.
I went with BC as well with the points. I think they're going to keep it close because they're going to pound the ball.
Yeah.
That's a lot of points.
I think Missouri's more of an unknown than people think. I know they shut 2 teams out, but they played 2 scrub teams. I like their talent, but I like Boston. Whenever you like the quarterback, and that was my point versus Florida State last week. If you like their quarterback was better than DJU from Florida State. I'm not saying their quarterback's better here, Castellanos and Cook, but he's a good quarterback. I'll take the points. Shit.
All right, next one, Oregon, 16.5 point favorites over Oregon State, 49.5 is the total here.
I got to take the dog again. I think Oregon's a little bit overrated.
Oh,
are we finally in a disagreement?
We're finally in a disagreement, but I could totally understand why you're getting Oregon State. You haven't been on the show, but yeah, I've been getting my my teeth kicked in here with Oregon.
You've had Oregon every week.
Yeah,
it's big on
Oregon. Bad, man.
It's brutal.
It's big on Oregon. All right. Notre Dame, 7.5 point favorites heading into Purdue. 47 is the total there. -290.
I hate this game, but I like the other ones. This one, I mean, I would have to probably take Notre Dame, but man, I don't like this game. I'll be honest.
This was going to be 14, Big T. This was going to be 14 if they won that game and played it, win by 10.
They look so bad, though.
They did.
Are you on Notre Dame?
I'm on Notre Dame, too. I just think they moved this line way too much as an overreaction to that game.
It kind of looked shitty to me the first week, too, though, versus A&M.
Still went into A&M and win the game.
I have to take Notre Dame, though. Like, I can't come back with Purdue, but I'm not confident in it. I think they might just not be good. What else?
And then the last game here, LSU, 6-point favorites heading into South Carolina, 48 total.
Yeah, I like South Carolina for sure. I think LSU. I don't like the quarterback play from LSU. So we talked about this a lot on the college show. Those of you playing DFS with Bryce and Bruce were on there with me. I like that quarterback from South Carolina. He's a redshirt freshman. We don't know a ton about him, and he runs. He can't throw that much, but that won't hurt you in college. I just don't like LSU. What side were you guys?
I'm with you on that one as well. I took the points here at South Carolina. I think they might win that game outright.
I like them outright for sure. I think LSU's in worse shape than people think.
So we have agreement on 4 of the 5 games. The only disagreement is really it's just a team that's close to Stats' heart because it's something that
he was like a crazy amount of conviction on that one anyway. It's like 16.5. I mean, I got to stick with Oregon State.
All right. So we're on to NFL, and we're starting with the Raiders heading into Baltimore. Baltimore 8-point favorites, 41.5 total. Big T, we were talking about this a little bit. I really did not like what I saw out of the Raiders. I didn't like what I saw in terms of for me, the lack of talent. There was Antonio Pierce talking all offseason long about how Zamir White was the guy. And then all of a sudden it's Alexander Mattison. He comes in the second series and Zamir White never sees the ball again. He now says they're going to play the hot hand, which to me means you don't really have a plan. You're just going to throw guys out there and see who does well. That's not a good recipe for success going up against Baltimore, in Baltimore, traveling across the country. What are your thoughts, Raiders at the Ravens?
Yeah, so I was a little concerned about Zamir when they were running him in the second half of the preseason, which the coaching staff's just a bunch of donkeys. I know they want to play for Pierce because he's a player's coach. He was a player, obviously, and they like that. But man, that doesn't mean he can coach as much as you like him. Still got to make some decisions. And this was one of the teaser games. I know everyone always kind of asks for my Wongs. Yesterday with Buffalo, you could do Buffalo, which obviously it's already in, but I tweeted if you're paying attention. And you could get, and it's still out there, where you can lay Baltimore -1.5 or 2 all across the board, really. Only the sharp books have brought it up to 9.5, like Pinnacle's 9.5 right now. But you can still get 8 on DraftKings. We're DK Partner, #DK Partner.
Yeah, Circa's got 8. Yeah.
8. I mean, tease that puppy down to 2. It's like a free. I know everyone makes fun of me for these freaking Wong teasers.
No,
but it's like a freebie. Like, just take Baltimore. They're not losing to the damn Raiders. It's a free square. But as far as the actual, what was the number we're going with on the show?
It's 8 right now on DraftKings.
So I'm still going Ravens, but I want it to be clear. I would rather even say you like whatever game you like this weekend. As long as it's not some crazy high scoring, I would just take Baltimore -2 and just tease your team you like and take an extra 6 points and go that way. That's how I like to bet. I'm not saying that it's the right way. Stats might disagree.
No.
That's my feeling for it.
If you want to laugh, so I took Buffalo straight and I teased them with Baltimore. So I took that down to 2.5 at the time, and I took the point. Obviously, the Buffalo was an easy one, but yeah. So here's the thing with this game is my model likes Vegas. The sharp,
really?
I've seen sharp money come in on Baltimore, but the line is just kind of staying. It's in that kind of no man's land where it'll fluctuate between 8 and 9 or 8.5, 9.5, and it doesn't. The books aren't too concerned about that. But yeah, Pinnacle, pretty sharp book.
Talking about it though, do you ever weigh that Pinnacle's 9.5 and
yes.
known as one of the sharpers?
That's what I'm looking at here. But then you get, you have Circa at 8. I mean, this game is driving me bananas. It's giving me all sorts of mixed signals. So
and those teaser numbers are so key. Like, people that haven't bet for a while might not realize it, but the difference between 8.5 and 9.5 is huge because of the teaser numbers.
Yes, exactly for the teaser aspect of it, 100%. Straight betting, yeah. I mean, the 8.5, 9.5 should not matter. 8 could come into play here. I mean, everything logically tells you Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore's not going to lose this game. We were talking about Survivor. They're going to be the most taken team in Survivor. But the fact that it's not double digits is a little odd to me. I mean, I thought this game would be at least 10, and it just has not gotten there. And probably won't get there, even with some sharp money. I saw one of the sharp guys I know got it at 8.5. A guy on an offshore book that can move lines and really hasn't moved this all that much. So it's a curious game for me. You talk about Pierce. Did you see his call in the fourth quarter to punt from the
on the 40, the plus 40?
The plus, he was like the plus, I'll give him the plus 45, something like that.
Same difference, but yeah.
It doesn't even matter. But it was fourth and less than 5, losing in the fourth quarter, and he punted. And I said, oh my God. I mean, in this day and age of guys going, everyone's going for it on fourth down, he decided to punt there. I don't know. His record's been great. I think there's a lot of regression coming though.
Yes.
For Mr. Pierce. I like the guy. Not sure he's going to be able to go into Baltimore though and win this one.
Yeah, they beat the Chiefs at home, and everybody got really excited. And now it's a new season, and I don't think it's going to go nearly as well as the last several games of last season. Next game is one that is really more interesting now because Christian McCaffrey has been ruled out. But we saw that, as it never does in San Francisco, it doesn't matter who they put in at running back. It's McCaffrey, it's Elijah Mitchell, it's Jordan Mason. It doesn't matter. Stats, they can put you in at running back, and you're going to get 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is a system, a machine. They're heading into Minnesota. 4.5-point favorites, 46 total. We'll start with you here, Stats. Do you think that this continues where it just doesn't matter who's at running back because of the system they have? And obviously, it's a much different opponent for the Vikings coming away from that easy victory in the Meadowlands. What are your thoughts on the 49ers and Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've actually got the height and weight of a running back. It's just different kind of weight than a lot of the
it's a different distribution, but that doesn't mean that it won't be any less effective.
Yeah. I do have big legs though, like a running back. But yeah, I'm not
churning legs.
Back to the speed.
Churning legs.
Yeah. But no, listen, I was on San Francisco last week on that game, and I didn't mind it at all with McCaffrey. You saw that game. I think I actually commented on one of Big T's tweets. They moved that line a half a point. You had the best running back in all of football. He's out of the game. It's a half point. That lets you know basically what running backs mean in this league, especially to the 49ers. You've got the Jets. We're going to figure the Jets defense is going to be pretty good, although obviously they didn't show anything last week to us, but it's just kind of plug and play for San Francisco. I think CMC was just gave them just that much more with the ability that he has, but they can run with anyone. They wind up they'll throw Debo back there. He's going to get a lot of carries as he did. So, the sharp now here's after I sell all that and I pump up San Francisco, Minnesota got the sharp money. That it's come down. It opened up at 7. It's come down. And, Darnold looked great in that game, albeit against the Giants. And we know how bad the Giant defense is, the overall team is. I'm going to have to stick to the sharp side and the way this line has moved. I think they'll be able to keep this game close, shockingly. I think San Francisco coming off that emotional Monday night game, maybe a little bit flat in this one, and they keep the game close.
Beanier, don't hang yourself. We're not talking favorably about your Giants. Big T, Niners in Minnesota.
So besides the long teasers, my favorite things to bet in the NFL are 5.5 point home dogs against public teams. And you might have to close your eyes sometimes because it's never pretty.
No.
But San Fran on the road, you can still catch 5.5 on FanDuel. And if you ever want to see like a good layout for free with the members, is click on the odds at the top of our homepage, and it'll bring you to this unabated sheet where you can see all the key books: Caesars, FanDuel, DK, MGM, ESPN, the score, all of it in one spot. So this is an interesting game because, like you guys said, it's 4.5 on DK, it's 5.5 on FanDuel. 2 main books right now. You can catch a 1-point middle, which I'm not saying to go bet a 1-point middle right there. I'm just saying 2 different prices. So you should be price watching some of these spots. But anytime I can catch a home team 5.5, for whatever reason, that number always hits on these public teams. And you can always catch 2-1 on the money line. I think Minnesota is one of the best coach teams in football too. I'm not saying like their quarterback's incredible with Darnold or anything like. I just think they're well prepared and they scheme good. And a short week for San Francisco. McCaffrey might get put on the IR. I seen today. So I just think it's a good spot for Minnesota. Could I get my ass kicked again by the Niners? I had the Jets Monday. Could it happen? Absolutely. The Niners are a juggernaut, but I think you got to bet the Vikings here, and I like the money. I think they can win outright, so I'm on them.
Always a little different on the road. What I will say for Sam Darnold, I mean, terrible luck here, right? Gets drafted by the Jets, signs with the Panthers, but we've seen in good situations, he's back up in San Francisco last year, had to play a couple of games, acquitted himself very well. And he was, a good game manager on Monday. Last Sunday, didn't have to do a lot, but they got the win. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's not running around back there like a fool, like some of these other quarterbacks. So it could happen. It could happen. We'll move on to the next game. The Saints. This is the team that I guess maybe not shocked, right? They were playing the Panthers, but I don't think a lot of people were heavy on the Saints because they were playing the Panthers because, it's the Saints and it's a, middling coaching staff, middling talent really across the board outside of Alvin Kamara. They're heading into Dallas, though, and Dallas did look very, very good, albeit against Deshaun Watson, and the Browns defense still looks like it's something to contend with, and Dak Prescott looked all like he was worth every penny that Jerry Jones paid him before that game. Dallas, 6-point favorites at home against the Saints, 46.5 total Big T. Do you think Dallas keeps rolling and New Orleans comes back to earth, or do you think they're going to make this a game indoors?
Yeah, both teams looked impressive to me last week, honestly. The Saints, even though they played a bad team, looked very impressive. And Dallas, I thought Cleveland would play much better last week. Dallas looked very impressive on the road. That's the type of game they've struggled with in the past, too. On the road versus a good defense, they really look good. And I like Dallas here, though. At home, Dak's always better at home. They're just a regular season team, as everyone says. It's a really good spot for Dallas for me. So I don't usually bet a lot of 6-point home favorites because I don't love that number in there. But I do like Dallas here, and I think they handle them. I think New Orleans probably played a little over their head last week. Give me Dallas.
Stats, I don't know about the game for DFS just because of how slow New Orleans tends to play. But what are your thoughts here on Dallas 6-point favorites at home?
Yes, I mean, this thing was sitting at 6.5, and then yesterday some sharp money came in on the Saints, knocked it down to 6 in some spots. If you look again, we look at the sharper books. Pinnacle's got this one at 6. I'm gonna go on the Saints side here. Take the points. I think what's happening, I think the public kind of likes Dallas, that performance against Cleveland, because it was more unexpected. I think everyone kind of expected Carolina to be bad. The Saints look great in that game. And again, we don't know just how good they are based off of that one performance against a quarterback who maybe is not long for the league. We'll see. But that defense is solid. The Saints have a very, very good defense, and I think Carr is finally in the second year here kind of putting it together. I think they're going to be able to keep this game close. And I like the point. I'll take the 6.5 points. I think the best line, I think the only place you can really get the 6.5 is at FanDuel, and you got to lay some juice. So I probably prefer the 6s that are out there at the 110.
These are always important. I think people have these questions a lot, and you're the sharpest with this stuff. Would you rather have +6 minus 105 at Caesars, it looks like, or the 6.5 minus 118?
Yeah, so that's a 13-cent differential, and I'd have to look at my chart, but I know it's not worth 13 cents. So for sure, I'll take the 6 minus 105. Every half a point is worth something, right? So of course, the ones that are worth the most are the ones that get you on and off the 3. Those are worth,
What do you value those at? Because I know you usually pay 20 cents, right? Do you value?
Yeah, they're worth probably about 18, 19 cents, something like that. Just put it this way: you're always going to pay, if it's at the same book, you're always paying a penny to 2 pennies higher than what you probably should. Not the end of the world, but when you do this for a living and you're doing it in volume, you got to be cognizant of that. But yeah, for sure, the 6s that are out there for the most part are better than that +6.5 at FanDuel right now.
Just randomly a 13-cent difference, straight up. Just here's the number. Boom. This is a 13-cent difference. Very impressive. Very impressive. Thank you, Stats. JSU is impressed. He's in here checking it out. We'll move on to the next one.
Stats in his bag today, he said. Stats is always in his bag.
It's like the kids say. Right? He's in his bag. Chargers heading into Carolina. Obviously, we were disgusted with the Panthers' performance last week. Chargers, however, are going across the country, and they are only 5-point favorites here. Stats, we'll stick with you. It's a 39 total. We saw the Chargers run the ball early, often, but we saw them run it with great efficiency against the Raiders. The Panthers it's going to take Dave Canales a long time to turn this around if he can get it going. But for this week, Chargers coming across the country, favored by 5, 39 total.
Yeah, this one plays right into Big T's play. So, I mean, it looks like a Carolina play. I'm going to actually pass on the side. I don't like the side at all. I think the play here, I think, is the under, and the under has gotten hammered, but I still think we're okay at the 38.5. I like anything over 38 points here to the under. The Chargers want to run the ball. That's the identity of a Harbaugh team. This Carolina team just offensively looks atrocious. I don't see how this game really goes over. I think the Chargers will be able to kind of keep. I don't think Carolina gets out of single digits, but the same token, the Chargers. I don't know how many points the Chargers are going to be able to score either. I think the best side of this game is the total, the under 38.5.
It looks like AP has already been seduced by some of the DFS prices on the Chargers this week.
The Chargers are going to be a tough DFS play all year.
Yeah, just like you said, all right, they're really the two brothers, the Harbaugh brothers. They really do coach very similarly. I mean, they want to slow the pace down. They want to run the ball. They want to play good defense. Those are terrible equations, Big T, for DFS. They are terrible.
They're really good. We'll give them credit too. They're really good football coaches. Say what you want about everything.
Very, very good. Very good. I mean, they coached against each other in a Super Bowl, right? Yeah. I mean, this is not a knock on them. This is
Harbaugh's never lost anywhere he's gone.
Bill Belichick did this for 20 years almost, and got 6 championships in New England. So we're not casting aspersions on the style generally to win football games. For DFS, it's a little bit hard. Right, J.K. Dobbins, okay, fine, right? If he's going to be the guy, I'm still not convinced that that's not going to end up the same way. It is kind of funny too, right, Big T? I mean, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards go from Baltimore to the Chargers, and it's the same crap. It's like, I don't know who the guy's going to be. But
it is weird too that they went from one brother to the other brother. There had to be some info shared in that. Obviously, they're freaking brothers. There's no way they didn't talk at all.
This will give you a little bit of a head start. Welcome back to the league. Yeah. Chargers 5-point favorites, 39 total. Do you have a take on the side, or is your favorite bet the over under?
So a couple things. I just gave my whole speech about how I love the 5.5s, and I do. Like 90% of the time, I do.
Just not here.
I just Carolina looks so, and I want to say too, because I pull up the unabated odds again. You can literally get 5.5 at MGM, 4.5 at FanDuel. You just have to price shop. I'm sure Stat says this every week on the show. Do not take a bad price when you can just deposit on a different book. You have to price shop these books. It's a full point difference. Makes a massive difference over the long term. But back to the game. I mean, I always like the dogs. I just think this is the number one matchup of the week, at least according to my numbers up front. The Chargers O-line, Carolina D-line, massive disadvantage towards Carolina. We know Harbaugh wants to run, just like JT just said. I think it's just slam dunk. I wish I could take Carolina, but I'm on the Chargers. I think they handle them up front, and I just think they win an ugly game. I like the under too with you guys. I think it's like a 24-6 type game or something where they just run it. And I know it's not a DFS show, but Dobbins is going to be popular, but maybe a little less popular now with the Mason news. Everyone's going to want to play Mason. I think J.K. Dobbins, like I said, number one mismatch up front. I think Dobbins looked fresh. I think Dobbins just smashes. So I'm happy Mason can take a little bit of that ownership away from him. Not saying he's going to be unowned because that's not true, but I love the Chargers and I love JK.
If he says he's not playing, Justin Herbert, we will talk about this on the NFL Up to Lock show on Sunday at noon. We'll see if he changes his mind before then. And it's going to be interesting because the Chiefs are on this slate, but Kyle Pitts is not on the slate. So we're going to have a fun time. That's Sunday at noon Up to Lock. But the next game, Big T, you were all over these guys, the JETS, and wide receiver number 1, Alan Lazard, marching into Tennessee here. The Jets, 3.5-point favorites in Tennessee, at Tennessee, 41 total. I mean, Tennessee was ahead of the game against the Bears, but then ultimately gave it away. Of course, we know what happened on Monday night. The Jets, of course, coming off a short week as well. Second game on the road. What do you got here?
Yeah, I like this game a lot too. I think the Jets had a little bit of a tough spot to open up with. San Francisco was just on a freaking mission, and they just dominated up front, totally smothered them, looked incredible. Rodgers looked rough, couldn't move, went to the same side of the field. I think the left side's obviously where he probably goes over and over. But I think this spot's great. They can take away these receivers with their cornerbacks. They're going to make them run. I don't think they'll be able to run near as effectively as the Niners did last week. I think the Jets are a clear cut. Everybody was on the Jets coming into the year. One bad game. Now they're only 3.5 on the road. I think Tennessee's overrated. I think the Jets are a pretty easy play this week.
For one, never Jets. So there's always hype around this team. And it is now, I've said this, I got made fun of for saying this. Obviously, we're not going to judge the season on week 1, but I'm also not really inspired by Robert Saleh stats. There was a meme, by the way. There was a picture of Aaron Rodgers showing him with an eye patch over his right eye because of how he attacks the left side of the field.
It is the left side, obviously, because he's a right.
Well, it was one pass that was, if you're looking at the field, one pass, I think, a total. Granted, not a lot of opportunity in that game the way it played out, but only one pass to the right side of the field. Stats, are you going back to the Jets, or are you going to the Jets here in this spot against Tennessee?
Yeah, so I mean, coming into the season, I was down on the Jets. I've been short the Jets. I'm short in the futures markets on the Jets. I told you, I think veteran quarterbacks changing teams. We've seen it time and time again. We saw it last week, happen quite a bit. Veteran quarterbacks moving to new teams have a tough time. It takes them a while before they get it going. So I went into the season. We talked about it before Big T got on the show here. Yeah. How if you've got some sort of a bias coming into the year, and then that gets confirmed in week 1, I think you kind of stick with it. So for me, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to stay fading the Jets here. I'm going to go with Tennessee. I'm going to take the points at home, the 3.5. I thought Tennessee was a little underrated coming into the year. That was a tough loss, tough game for them in week 1. I think it was, the offense is not great. Give it to you. And I see where Big T is coming from here. I think the Jet defense will step up and play better. But this Jet defense, if you go back to last year, finished the season very mediocre. Come out. Yep. It's San Francisco. I get it. San Francisco just blows the doors off them. I think, I think Rodgers going to struggle. They had some drops in that game too that just totally stalled out the drives and really killed them. But you get any pressure on Rodgers, I don't think he's going to be very mobile. He's not the guy he was. When Rodgers was at his peak, he was one of the more mobile quarterbacks in the league. I mean, we don't think of him as a guy who runs the ball because he didn't do it. They didn't have set plays for him to run the ball, but he was a 30 to 40-yard type of run on scramble type of guy and a lot of throws off the scramble. I don't think you're going to see a lot of that anymore out of Aaron Rodgers. And I think it's going to take time. If it happens at all, it's not going to happen early in the year. So I'm going to fade the Jets until further notice. I'll take Tennessee.
All right, so a little bit of disagreement there. I think it would be 2-on-1 if I had to pick. And
you're allowed to pick. Get in there. I like being 1-on-2.
Well, but it is for me. I will tell you, it is more so biased against the Jets than anything else. Although same thing.
You got two New York guys who've grown up around the Jets, yeah. And so I get it.
Yes, but also, I mean, the point about Rodgers, right? The same thing as I said, we were talking about this earlier with Kirk Cousins. It's like, guys coming off a major injury at that age, it isn't going to be a smooth transition, and they may never get to the point where that new team thinks they're going to get to with those quarterbacks. Next game, the Colts. The Colts heading into Green Bay. Of course, Green Bay going to be without Jordan Love, and the market is taking notice, as we talked about a little bit earlier. Stats, we'll start with you here. The Colts are favored by 3 points. Again, early in the season, the weather, the elements in Green Bay, not as terrible as you would see later on in the season, but still a dome team going outdoors. They're 3-point favorites. The total is 40.5, albeit in a loss. Anthony Richardson looked very good, looked like what we expected to see of him before he got hurt last year. But what do you think about this game? Again, Green Bay very well coached as well.
Yeah, this is not going to be popular. Because I told you before when we were talking about Survivor, I cannot tell you how many people have DM'd me with the Colts as their pick. They're asking me if they liking the Colts in Survivor, which is just, to me, is bonkers with all these other teams that are out there. But I get it. Malik Willis, he has not been good, to say the least. Everyone likes Richardson, including me. But Richardson still has a ways to go as far as throwing the ball accuracy. They've got him throwing the ball deep. I get it. I love that with a young quarterback, by the way. When you have a young, inaccurate quarterback, throw the ball as far as you possibly can. You don't need accuracy 40 yards down the field. So I like that strategy. The kid runs hard. I just don't know how long he's going to survive with the way he runs. I hope it's for a long time because I really enjoy watching him play. But I think Green Bay at home is getting disrespected. This line, I think they basically moved this line. Where do you think Green Bay would have been had Love been healthy? They're more than a 3-point favorite, I think, in this game. So they're moving.
The line was up because I saw it. It was like 6.5. It was like a massive swing.
Right. So do you think? I don't know if 10. I thought this was like a 9-point. They were basically 9. Maybe it's 9.5 or 9. And some books are 2.5 right now. But this thing opened at the 3, and it's come down with the entire world hating Green Bay. So. I'm gonna get on the Green Bay side just for that reason, just kind of as a market, looking at the market and like reading the lines here. I like Green Bay. Do I like the quarterback? I don't. I like the other quarterback better. But you kind of this is not a game I really want to bet. But if you twist my arm here, I'm just going to kind of read the tea leaves, read the market, and the market's kind of telling you take Green Bay plus the 3. I think the only place you can get that 3 right now is -115 is at BetMGM.
So I'm looking at DraftKings right now. Green Bay has +3 -118.
Oh, they're a little worse. Okay. Yep.
I haven't refreshed.
That is correct. Yeah, you are correct. It is.
Right. Big T, thoughts on the Colts and the Packers?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Stats talked about. I don't think it should move. The problem is Willis is so bad at quarterback, but you do have the rest of the team is good. They're well coached. They got a lot of talent around him. They're going to make easy play calls to make it as easy as possible on him. The tough part is he is really bad. But I agree. I just think it's too much of an overreaction. This is not going to be a game I'm heavy on by any means, just because of how many unknowns there are. It's another game where if I really liked it, I would just tease the Packers up to 8.5 or 9, depending on what number. Same difference, really. But I don't love it. I can't see the Colts blowing them out, though, which is one of the reasons I would just tease it again, just because if the Colts win, I think it'll be close. I don't see them just going in and out because the Packers are going to play hard for Willis, and it's not totally out of the question that Love plays. Like, I know that could be a slight hot take. They haven't ruled him out, and he looks a lot better than they thought he would. So he probably doesn't play. It's too early in the year to really force it. Yeah. But don't be shocked if he just Sunday morning they're like he's going to play, which if you bet this early, obviously the line will move a ton if that happens. So you get a little tiny bit of edge taking the Packers at this price just because it's not going to get worse, obviously. It's not going to go to 3.5 or some weird number towards the other way. So I'm on the Packers, but not a ton of conviction from me.
All right. So a potential edge there for people who want to take it. We'll move on. This game, listen, the last couple of years when these teams have played each other, it's been very popular in DFS. It's been a game people wanted to see. I still want to see it. I just wonder if Tampa Bay is anywhere near as good as they looked against the Washington Commanders last week. The Bucs are heading into Detroit. The Lions, 7.5-point favorites, 51 total here. This is going to be a marquee game, certainly in the early window with the total and with the matchup here with the receiving core of both teams. Really, Detroit's all-around team, including the running game, but also Jameson Williams, who that finally had that big game that people were waiting for. Big T will stay with you. Tampa Bay, 7.5-point dogs heading into Detroit. I kind of think that number's right. I think that maybe we see a little bit more from the Lions here, not playing the Rams, and a defense that can obviously be thrown and run on, as Jaden Daniels had a couple of rushing touchdowns last week. Brian Robinson had a pretty good game. We know that Dan Quinn wants to do a lot of that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I know I sound redundant, but this is how I bet the NFL. And Detroit -7.5 is just the perfect teaser number. I know I keep saying the same stuff, but it's how I've made money betting the last several years. Like at DraftKings, obviously we're a DK partner now. You can bet these two teamers. They give you -120 even on the Wongs, and -120 is a good price on these things these days. A lot of places are 130 or even more. So, I mean, you can take advantage on DraftKings and just like Baltimore and frickin' I know Baltimore is up higher some places, but at DK you can get 8 and Detroit's 7.5 and you get -120. Like if you liked either one of those teams, why would you not just 2-team tease it at -120 and get both games below 3? I know it's a little bit of a cop out for what you're asking me, but this is how I would bet it. And I just think the number is pretty good though at 7.5. So to further answer it, I like the teaser for Detroit. And one of the reasons I like Wong's, I can still bet Tampa Bay plus 7.5 if I bet Detroit in the teaser. That's a 6-point freaking middle, and I could easily win both sides. So it's a little bit of a hedge, and I know people hate hedging, hate all that stuff. But if I had to pick, I like Tampa Bay plus 7.5 because I think they'll score points. All year long, Detroit is going to score points because they're loaded on offense, and their defense sucks. They're going to give up points on D. And Tampa Bay's offense is going to be good. They got a nice rookie, McMillan, obviously a ton of other weapons. I think we see points. And like I said, Detroit with the teaser, Tampa Bay plus the 7.5.
No, I love it when you go into that sales pitch about why wouldn't you bet more? I mean, it just makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you bet more? Stats, what are your thoughts here? Tampa Bay heading into Detroit.
Listen, Big T is spot on with going to DK at the -1 at -120. You could bet the Wongs blindly and you're not going to make a fortune. You'll do okay betting them. So certainly if you like the play, I love what Big T just said there, and that's why you have to have multiple sports books. And DraftKings give you the best price there. When you get to the -130, they're not as attractive, but at -120 they hit. And the Wongs, if anyone's not familiar, it's basically the 1.5 2s and 2.5 being teased up, and then the 8.5, 8, 7.5 getting teased down because you're crossing the 7 and the 3. They hit it about 76% of the time, those teasers, which is enough of a percentage to cover the -120. So I do like that as well. I don't really love this game at the 7.5. I think if you kind of twist my arm, I'll take the plus 7.5. Don't really love it. What we saw on the total, though, this thing opened at 48.5. Sharp money came in, banged it all the way up. If you look at Pinnacle, it basically hit 52, and that's where the resistance was, came back down now to 51. I mean, you think there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game, but that number, I think we've kind of lost the value on the over. I think if anything, there's probably a little bit of value to the under, but not a lot. I agree with Big T. I think the only way you're going to play this game is from a teaser standpoint, at least from my standpoint. And if I had to, I'm in some sort of a pool or something like that, I'll just take the 7.5. But this is a very tight. I think they priced this game pretty well.
All right. Moving on, Seahawks heading into New England. The Patriots here, 3.5-point favorites going across the country, 38.5 total. This is not a game that anyone, unless you're a diehard Seahawk or Patriot fan, is really going to want to sit down and watch stats. But from a betting perspective, is there value here on the 3.5 or the 38.5?
I like New England here plus the 3.5. I like the home dog. We'll say, look, I was down on Cincinnati coming into the season, but I Cincinnati probably should have won that game either way. But the New England defense played really well there. I think the trip across the country, New England, I think they're going to put up a really good defensive performance. Seattle looked good in the second half. Took them a little while to get it going in that game against Denver. But I'm not overly impressed with Seattle. I think New England shockingly gets out here to a 2-0 start and as co-leaders in the AFC East and wins this game. So I do like New England plus and you could get 3.5s out there. I like them plus the 3.5.
3.5 is what DraftKings, our partner, has it right now.
Yes.
Big C. What are your thoughts?
Yep, totally agree with stats. And it's just a slight thing, but Kenny Walker being probably out for Seattle. I know we don't downgrade, and I downgrade running backs less than probably anybody. I don't think they mean much. But for Seattle, maybe he means just a hair more. And even if that means 3.5 to 3, that's still a massive half point that you're getting. So for me, I don't have a ton of conviction on this because it's still New England. And I agree with how stats broke it down, though. I think their D will be solid. Can they score enough to beat Seattle? I mean, I don't know about their offense. I don't know if they're going to be able to move the ball a ton. But if it's 3.5 right now, which it is on DraftKings, FanDuel, a bunch of places, I think this game goes off 3 probably. So you're getting a half-point kind of equity right now getting on it. So I'll take New England with stats in this.
All right. Moving on. just a couple games left in the 1 o'clock window here. This is a game that we talked about stats. Talked about it in Discord some this week. The Giants heading into Washington, playing the Commanders. The Commanders are 2-point favorites, 43.5 total, which I think is interesting, Big T here, just because of how poorly both defenses played last week. Of course, the Giants' offense really looked terrible. Washington's offense, at least they put up points against Tampa Bay. What do you like here, Giants at the Commanders?
I love the Giants here. It's the number one matchup of the week for me up front. As far as D-line, O-line, I think the Giants have a huge advantage up front, getting pressure on Washington. Yeah, of course, B. Nair likes the Giants. I love the Giants here, though. So me and B. Nair are arm in arm. I think Washington's defense might be the worst in all of football. And like I said, I think the Giants have a clear advantage up front. I think the Giants might have a clear coaching advantage too, as sad as that sounds. I think the Giants are like a really, really good play. And if you're playing DFS, I think Neighbors is like full explosion spot waiting to happen.
Neighbors was limited in practice early in the week, but announced that he's a full go, no issues there. Stats, Giants, Commanders. Last week, I know that you thought a little bit more of the Giants than what they showed up and delivered. Do you think they bounce back here?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite games as well, and I'm on the same side with the Giants. And depending on the book, and DraftKings is the book that we really want to look at for those Wongs. I'll go to the Big T Wongs. You could get them at +2 over on DraftKings, which is nice. A lot of the books are at +1. So
they can easily go off favored too, which is one of the things people don't pay attention with Wongs. Like you could literally bet the Giants right now +8 on DraftKings. They could go off a 1 or 2 point favorite by Sunday kickoff.
They might. Yeah, they might go off a favorite in this game. Because I know the sharp money is not on Washington. I saw sharps come in earlier in the week on the Giants. I think if anything, you're right. I think potentially this game flips to the Giants a favorite. So I would get this line now. It's never going to get up to, if you're kind of waiting for the 3, it never gets to 3. There's too much resistance before that. So you're not going to see that number. This is probably the best number you're going to see on the Giants all week. Yes, I was higher on, and JBC was giving me a lot of crap for it. So because of that, I went and watched the all 22 and I wanted to see, was it Jones? What was it? It was a combination. They were behind the sticks quite a bit in that game. They couldn't run the ball. That's not going to be a problem here against Washington. They'll be able to run the ball against Washington, get Danny Dimes in some better situations. And they tried, listen, for DFS purposes, I know everyone likes him this week, and there's a good reason. I mean, they run a lot of plays, even down at the goal line. They got the ball like inside the 5, and they were just running set plays for Jones. But some of the coaching I did not understand. I mean, they were second and long, whatever it was. Minnesota would just drop everyone back, double cover the guys on the outside, and the Giants would just run 3 guys deep and just hope, and then Jones would just have to dump it off to the tight end or the running back coming out of the backfield. So it was just, I thought it was terrible game planning and terrible coaching. That's not going to be a problem. I think the total is a little odd because I think both teams are going to be able to score here. So that total is just giving me, I'm a little surprised. I think the over is in play as well. So I like the Giants and the over in this game, but I really like the Giants this week.
And JBC, of course, is on the Giants as well, as AP mentioning that he was persuaded into putting a max bet down on the Giants on Sunday. So we will be, I'm sure, rooting for and playing the Giants a lot in our DFS lineups, which I kind of agree with this week. Next game, Cleveland coming off that loss to Dallas, heading into Jacksonville. Of course, Jacksonville looked not so great last week in their game against Miami. Cleveland, 3-point dog, 41.5 total. Stats will stick with you. It's probably not a game that we're going to get too excited about for DFS, but on the betting side, it looks about where it should be as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a tight one. You've got the guy. We went to Daniel Jones and talked about just the crap that Daniel Jones basically took last. I don't know if anyone took more than Deshaun Watson has. I mean, they're basically saying this is a disaster. And it's, if you want to call it experiment, a failed experiment in bringing in Deshaun Watson. Obviously, it hasn't been good. He's yet to throw for 300 yards with this team. He really hasn't done a whole lot without Hopkins, really. So even if you go back to, he wasn't the same quarterback without him. He was never really an accurate quarterback. I think he just had the with Hopkins there, who basically at that point in time could catch everything no matter where he threw it. and I think he made him a better quarterback. So my lean would be Jacksonville here. Don't love the game, though. I think the 41.5 is also pretty tough on the total. I think I would just kind of lean towards Jacksonville, but this is not a bettable game to me.
Big T.
I hate to say the same thing, but this is my least favorite game on the whole slate. My hot take's always been that Watson was never good. I know people don't agree with that. He had so much scrub time when he was in Houston. They'd be down like 21 and he would just go off like against prevent and stuff. I was never impressed. I hated the move from the beginning, and he's got all this extracurricular stuff too going on that makes him even more distracted. But I don't think Jacksonville's great either. They look terrible. I hate to totally take the cop out, and I was honestly hoping Stats pick someone so I could cop on with them. I just don't like it. I don't want to give a pick that I have no conviction on. I have less than no conviction in this game, so I'm not even going to give a pick.
All right. So, look, there's 13 games. You don't have to bet on everyone, and this is one where you just say, nope, skip on to the next one. The next one is we finally get to the 4 o'clock hour, the 4 o'clock window. This is one that I do have interest in from a DFS perspective, from lots of perspectives. The Rams head into Arizona, playing the Cardinals. Cardinals 1-point favorites, Big T, 47.5 total. We have seen these Rams-Cardinal games absolutely shoot out. Of course, the Rams are going to be without Puka Nacua for at least some period of time. What are your thoughts on the Rams-Cardinals?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite games of the week. The Rams they kind of shot their wad a little bit, in my opinion, last week. They played great. They lost Puka. They lost 2 linemen. They basically were playing shorthanded the entire game and battled them till the end, but still lost. It went overtime, I think. It went overtime. I just think this is a great spot for Arizona at home. I love Arizona in this spot. It's one of my favorite games of the week, no doubt. I think the Rams are just too shorthanded. I mean, they're down 2 or 3 linemen. They're down Puka. Tyler Johnson, who sucked for the last 5 years, had one good game, and people are confident in him. I just don't see it at all. I absolutely love Arizona in this spot.
Stats, we've got 1 vote for Arizona. Sounded like all in. What are your thoughts?
I am I'm tentatively on the Rams side. Do not have nearly the conviction as Big T, so I would probably lean more towards Big T if you're looking to tail somebody. But I do like and this looks like the squarest play of them all, but I kind of like this game to go over. I mean, I can't see either one of these teams stopping anyone at 47.5 over at DraftKings. Looks a little tasty. I mean, it's minus 112. Yeah, I mean, I would look to the over more so than the side on this game. I think both teams showed you last week. I mean, one of the only teams that threw, there was only 2 teams that threw for 300 yards. The Rams were one of them, playing against a pretty weak Detroit defense. But you're back here, Arizona. Look at what they did with, they had that game. It looked like they were going to win that game on the road, and Josh Allen just basically took it over. I don't think they have the defense really to stop. Listen, no Puka, no problem. You're going to have a ton of Kupp in this game, and I think Arizona is going to be able to score with them as well. So I think this game more goes over. And then go ahead. You can lean if you guys. Big T's got a little bit more conviction here than I do on the game. So go with Big T.
It's a game we'll be definitely talking about on Sunday. Cooper Kupp, tons of targets on Sunday night, and believe he's going to get a ton more targets in this game. Next one, Big T, we'll go back to you here. Only because it is your Bengals against the Kansas City Chiefs, AP's Chiefs. Bengals in Kansas City. Kansas City 6-point favorites, 48 total. Joe Burrow, the Bengals saying, no, his right arm does not have massive nerve damage that he can't pick up a water bottle. What do you expect out of this Bengals team come Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, they were terrible last week. I know Stats and JBC always hate my Bengals, but they were terrible. They're always slow starters. T's probably already, I don't know if he's officially rolled out, but I can't see him playing. Shorthanded. The Chiefs look great. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown looks like he might be out for the year now. But they're loaded. They got receivers. They got Xavier Worthy. They got options for Mahomes, which is good for him. Obviously, Rashee Rice looks like a legit number 1 this year. They just won the Super Bowl with no receivers. I hated the Chiefs last year. I love the Chiefs this year. I think they have a chance to run the table almost. But I say all that, I think this is a great Bengals spot. It's that same what opened at 5.5, or I don't know if it opened, but it's been 5.5 most of the week. Now it's like 6 most spots, maybe because T was getting rolled out. I don't know. Maybe that's a half-point swing. I don't know. But either way, the Bengals always play this team good. I think the last 5 times the Bengals won 3, the Chiefs won the last 2, but they're always 3-point games. They're always close games. They always go to the wire. I have to take the points coming off the letdown. I know the Bengals and Burrow are comfortable in here. I know the public will be on the Chiefs. I love the Bengals here. Sign me up.
All right. I don't know stats that I expected anything different. The way that started off, I thought maybe he was going to go against the Bengals, but we've got to vote for the Bengals. It looks like maybe you agree.
I don't, but it's I've got a little bit more conviction than I did maybe on the last game. I just can't get it. Listen, I've been short the Bengals coming into the season. I was short the Bengals last season. There's no reason for me to jump on them here in this spot. I'm going to play a wait and see game, but I think Kansas City, they should be able to handle the 6 points or 5.5 that you could get in some spots. They should be able to handle this team. I think when the Cincinnati playing them tough in this building, that was a different Cincinnati team. I think we've got to wait and see this team show that they are the Cincinnati team that people thought they were. This is the marquee matchup of the afternoon. It would have been in years past. This game may not be that good. So I'm going to take Kansas City to kind of roll. This is, kind of two big rivals in the AFC that Kansas City gets right off the bat. And if Cincinnati is going to turn it around, and last week was an anomaly, they could certainly put a hurting on Cincinnati's chances to kind of win that division or at least get to the playoffs, starting them off 0-2. I think Kansas City kind of buries them early here in this one and wins this game. I think the total, as far as the total goes, I think this is a tough one on the total because I don't know what we're going to get from the Cincinnati offense. I think Kansas City's defense is going to be able to hold Cincinnati in check. I don't know if Cincinnati's defense really holds down Kansas City. I like what Big T was saying as far as Kansas City's that the offense looked so much better than they did last year, and we're talking about a Super Bowl winning team. I agree with Rice. I thought he was running. I mean, they were running those crossing patterns, and it looked unstoppable last week against Baltimore. I think, I mentioned Baltimore. I think Baltimore is very close to Kansas City. I think it's those two teams and everybody else in the AFC looking up at them. So I think Kansas City covers the number here.
All right, last game on the main slate, the Steelers heading into Denver. Stats. Steelers are actually 2.5-point favorites here, 36.5 total. This is going to be a difficult game to watch. This is not a game that I feel a lot of conviction in. I think both teams looked Bo Nix didn't look very good last week. And of course, the Steelers going to have to go with Justin Fields a second week in a row. But their defense kept them in the game, got them the win in Atlanta. What are your thoughts on the Steelers and the Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, the value here was really getting this number at +3 with Denver. That's where you needed to get it, and it's not going to get there because there's too much sharp money at the 3. So this will never get back up there. But if you want to lean one way or the other, I think you still take Denver here at the +2.5. I think they might actually win this game. Now, I liked Pittsburgh last week going into Atlanta. That was one of the games I hit on. But I think Denver here, I think they'll keep this game tight. 36.5 on the total is just, not going to be a fun game to watch. But I think this will be a difficult spot for Pittsburgh. And I don't expect Wilson to play. But we saw last week that line didn't much matter. Yeah. If you remember, we were talking on the show, and JBC liked the other side and was saying that Wilson wasn't going to play and the line was going to move. But it really didn't move all that much for Field. So they're kind of weighting both of those quarterbacks equally. But I think the 2.5. I think I'll take the home dog. And again, you go on DraftKings, they're -102 plus 2.5. And this is, again, it's a wonk spot. Just kind of tease them up in a 36.5-point spread, 36.5-point total. If you get 8.5 here with Denver, I think that's a lot of points on a game where nobody's going to score.
Big T, thoughts on the last game of the main slate? Steelers heading into Denver.
Yeah, redundant, but another teaser game. Denver +8.5. I want to point out all of them just so people can play the combos and stuff. And it helps that I like the Broncos too. I think the Steelers are a little bit over their head being favored on the road, even though Denver stinks. Pittsburgh, I mean, they knew Atlanta, though, because Arthur kind of knew what was going on there. I feel like the matchup was good last week for Pittsburgh. Now Denver had a tough matchup in Seattle. It's a tough place for Bo Nix to start. Now he's back home. I like this Denver spot. So does Denver suck? Yeah. But can they cover at home? I think they win out. I mean, obviously, if you bet a 2.5-point dog, you think they win. But I think they do win. I think they handle them. Justin Fields, we know what he is. He's nothing special. He'll take sacks. He'll turn the ball over. I like Denver.
All right. That is the main slate. Really quickly on the Sunday night and Monday night game, I'm going to ask you guys just to give me your favorite bet of those two games. Then we got to get out of here to go to our baseball lineups. Bears at the Texans, Big T on Sunday Night Football. Favorite bet on that game?
I like the over, actually, which let me see what let me up because I only had the other ones.
Texans favored by 6.5, 45.5 total.
40. Yeah, I like the over for my bet in that game. I like Houston too if I had to pick, but if I had to pick one, I'll take Houston over.
Stats.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bears plus the points betting wise, even though I do like Houston for survivor pools.
I think Houston's a team too, just to talk slightly more about the over just real quick. I think that I'm going to blind bet the over on Houston games all year. I just think they're going to score. Last year, I regretted not doing it quicker. They just would score every freaking week. And I waited way too long. I'm not waiting this year. I'm just going to bet the over every week with Houston.
All right, Houston and the over. And then the Monday night game stats, the Falcons did not look so good heading into Philadelphia to play the Eagles. Of course, Eagles have at least the extra couple of days of rest. 6.5-point favorites are Philadelphia, 47.5 total favorite side.
Yeah, Philly's the play here. I think you continue to fade the Falcons. I like Philly, and if you need to put that DGen a little parlay in, I'll take Philly in the over.
Big T.
I might as well finish with a disagreement because this game looks like I don't see how anyone's betting Atlanta in this spot after how bad Cousins looked. Everyone always likes Philly, Saquon. They feel so good about it after last week. I'm still not sold on Philly. Where was it? Brazil? They freaking played Green Bay. I think Atlanta wins outright is my hot take.
Ooh.
JT's Atlanta. I think it's like trap city for Philly. People are way overrating Philly and underrating Atlanta. People are picking Atlanta to win the division. Now everyone's quitting on them because Cousins is slower than me out there. But I think they're gonna beat up this secondary with Pitts and Drake London.
All right, we end with Trap City for the Philadelphia.
Who you got in that game, JT? That's your team. You got to finish us up here with a tiebreaker.
I listen. I did not like what I saw out of Kirk Cousins. We talked about it with Aaron Rodgers. Very similar thing. It's hard for me to believe that Kirk Cousins, after putting on that
squad,
what?
You don't believe in your squad?
I mean, I didn't like the Kirk Cousins signing. Okay. And really hard for me to believe that after he performed the way he did here at home against Pittsburgh, that he's going to go into Philly and somehow pull off an upset there. So I am on the Philly side. I understand what you're saying because the last couple of years it seemed that every time you wrote the Falcons off, even though we had the terrible coaching staff, they would pick up a win in one of these spots. I just don't know if this team is there yet. I do like the usage I saw from Bijan Robinson. Certainly like the fact that they're at least making an effort to get the ball into Kyle Pitts' hands. But I think going on the road against this Philly team right now is a little bit of a tough ask. Look, they can probably score points, but I think they'll give up points as well. So that's my thought on the Monday night game. That does it for us. We'll be back next Friday. Hopefully we can get Big T to do 6 shows every Friday and maybe make a little cameo with us. For him, for Stats, for Pooh behind me, and JBC on a plane somewhere. I'm JT Hayes. Good luck in your contest this weekend.